We are waiting on Chair Soto and Commissioner Craig. However, we do have a quorum.
I don't think Sid is coming. Not sure, but he told me he wasn't coming.
Okay. Let's just, Vice Chair Robin, did you want to give Chair Soto a couple of minutes?
Yes. Hey, Evelyn, did you hear from her whether she
Yes.
was going to attend?
Yes, I've been in communication with her today.
Sure. Let's hold on for a couple minutes,
Oh,
please.
there she is. Yeah, there she is. Okay, she's in.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Evelyn, are we waiting for anybody? Am I the-
Commissioner Craig is not here yet, but I don't think he's attending today, so we can get started.
Wonderful. Give me just 1 second. Well, I think we can get started on roll call, please. That'd be great.
Commissioner Fuderer is present. Commissioner Marshall.
Here.
Commissioner Craig is currently absent. Commissioner Gassan.
Here.
Commissioner Bernstein.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Robin.
Here.
Chairperson Soto.
Here, thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. I think I did lift things out of order, but thank you everyone for being here. It is October 20th. We're gonna call this meeting to order. It's 5:32. So we're gonna, I definitely did things out of order. Sorry, Evelyn. So we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance next. Commissioner Bernstein, you're all ready. Do you want to lead us off?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So next on the agenda, we have the acceptance of the agenda. Measure J Commission will discuss the order of the agenda and may amend the order and add items and may remove items. So we need to accept. I think I
move we accept the agenda.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Futter.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Gazan. We have a motion by Commissioner Futter. We have a second by Commissioner Gazan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nays? Great, we have the acceptance of the agenda. Hold on, I have two different files open. Just give me 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, folks. Okay, appreciate your patience here. Okay, so in terms of welcome comments for me, I just want to say thanks for your patience. I guess would be the first thing.
Hold on, there's public comment.
Oh, do we have anybody here for public comments?
We did not receive any public comments this evening.
Okay, we did get a really nice letter from the Palm Springs Unified School District that Evelyn shared with us earlier in the week, which I think is like a really nice reflection of engaging with the community, engaging with new partners in new ways. And, you know, I think it's such a good first step in terms of our community initiated projects. And as an outside organization, they're able to move a lot quicker, right, with the funds that they receive, but we're gonna hopefully be receiving more feedback on those types of projects as other projects are developed. So I'm really excited for that.
Can I just mention also on the Mizell is having their
The
kickoff.
opening. Yeah, they invited the Measure J Commission as well. Evelyn sent that too this month. So I hope you all.
Encourage you to attend. I think you'll like it.
Mhm.
Great. Okay. Okay, I think there's just two Nancy's, not a public comment. Great, so that moves us to welcome comments. So just, yeah, thanks for your patience. It's a transition time for me. But I think we're really looking forward to just continuing the work that Chair Bernstein established of a lot of transparency, a lot of process clarifications, and learning from kind of this post-COVID world. So if there's any other feedback, I definitely welcome it, be either email or when we have general discussion too. So that moves us to new business for the Measure J update and adopted Measure J community initiated projects. And Joel, I'm guessing that might be you.
Actually, the budget would be Nancy.
All right. Nancy or Chris, are either one of you going to update on that?
I think she said she's on the phone.
On the phone, yes. Nancy, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself.
Or could we jump to 2B and get back to Nancy?
Yeah. Nancy, are you? Looks like she's unmuted.
If she doesn't, I'm
Chris can, right?
sorry. Yeah, if she doesn't, I go ahead and, are we looking at the budget?
Yes. Can you maybe
Yeah,
give
go
her
ahead
a budget
and-
update?
I'll give it a shot. Can you put that up on the screen, Evelyn? We changed I know Nancy changed a little bit of the formatting. We think it flows a little bit better, and it kind of gives the whole picture of all the funding for all the Measure J projects. I think she's trying to connect, but I'll go ahead and start, and if she is able to connect the audio, she'll jump right in. So this is what it looks like now. And what we did is we added fund balance to this, and just instead of just looking at expenses and revenue, because we know that in the first year, this year, fiscal year 23, we're going to be dipping into that fund balance. And you can see it's quite large at 16.2 million, which is the number under the adopted budget 2022-2023. So that's where we're starting out this year, is at $16.2 million. We're expecting about 20.3 in revenue, but you'll see at the bottom of the page that we're already down from budget, and we're kind of seeing that across the board through the city as well, that we're kind of down. So we'll just hope that it plays out better as we get through the year. We have our typical expenses for street repairs at $6 million budgeted for this year. The community projects budget is at 3 million. And I know there's some available money left in that budget for more projects, but right now it's at 3 million. And then we have our airport reserve for 200,000. So that's $9.2 million in multi-year projects. Other expenses, we have our debt service expense at $3.2 million. And then we have the downtown property maintenance and other expenses. So I think this is made up of 3 projects. If I remember correctly, one is the 500,000 for the Mizell kitchen, which we have already sent them. And then it's I think there's a sewer lateral in play here, and Joel can maybe tell a little bit more. I think that's about, oh gosh, I can't remember the number on that. And then there is, Nancy's calling me. And then there is some money for security guard services downtown. So that makes up the 1.1 million under downtown property maintenance. We have transfers out that we budgeted this year that were approved by the commission of $2 million. That consists of the $1 million that's going for the police radios. We're going to transfer that money out to the capital projects fund, and that will be used, and we'll make the full $3 million payment out of the capital projects fund. But the contribution that Measure J has approved is $1 million. The other $1 million is approved for the Plaza Theater. And I know that when the commission approved that amount, that they wanted the funding, the $1 million to be the last remaining funding. And so I'm not sure where the Plaza Theater is in their total capital campaign, but there is $1 million here that Measure J can contribute. The other money, $17.4 million that you see, that's the remaining amount of money after the $9.2 million above in the multi-year projects for other capital projects that the commission approved. So total expenditures this year, 32 million. And you see, that's why we brought in the fund balances, because we knew we were going to dip into that this year. And of course, that 17 million probably will not all get spent this year unless Joel works 7 days a week and 24 hours a day. But so there's probably going to be some carryover. But we're going to end up this year. We plan to end up this year with about 3.7 million. And you can see what we've done in the schedule is at the top for 23-24, we've carried that $3.7 million forward to begin the next year with. And then you can see what we've done also as far as predicting revenue. We have just kind of budgeted a 2% increase, very small, very conservative increase for revenue for the remaining 4 years of the schedule. All of the street repairs, community projects, airport reserve is all pretty typical amounts. Oh, she's on? Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to continue? Does she want me to continue?
Keep going, keep going.
Okay. And then, of course, debt service continues out for the next 4 years. And the remaining capital project expense, I believe, and Nancy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the commission just approved the first year of these projects. And so what we've done is we've added, we spread out the full project cost in anticipation that the council would approve the remaining project cost of those projects.
Right, and that is I'll just jump in. That's just a projection of our 5-year CIP. Essentially, it's what I projected over the next 5 years. That's the money that's shown there.
Yep. So you can see as we go out the year that we do go negative on our fund balance, but we do make that up in year 5. So you just kind of have to watch and be careful. I believe that Joel has said, and I'll just reiterate, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of these projects haven't been vetted yet. And once they become vetted, I think that we're seeing that there is an increase in their costs. So once we get out to 5 years and we have some of these projects that go that long, I'm just going to say that I'm not sure that what is in this budget is going to be actual. So just a caveat for everybody here. And the last thing we'll look at is the revenue for 22-23 right now, as of today, is 1.54 million. Last year at this point in time, it was 1.82 million. So we're down comparative to this time last year of about 16% or 280,000. So we got a little bit of making up to do. Let's hope we can get that done. And I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions that any of the commission has.
Evelyn, turn me on so they can hear it, please.
You're on.
Okay, so we're going to go over a couple of things. I wanted to show you the Measure J initiative project screen first. So can we go into that real quick?
Okay.
There we go. So I want to show you first, this is you were awarded $3 million this year for an adopted budget. We have issued checks for number 13, 14, and 15. They requested it. They followed, they had to complete a contract, send us an invoice, and then we issued the checks. So basically, after we tallied up what you approved as a commission, you have a remaining amount of $818,525 available for spending this year. So now you can go back to the next page. So that's what you have to decide on when the timing is right. So you'll see that I included on adopted budget 2023. That's what was adopted, and that's what we hope to spend. I didn't put what we actually spent because we're probably going to spend the whole amount. So that's basically just the adopted budget. And it's good to look at the fund balances. I'm not sure who set up the spreadsheet initially, but what happened is they always said what's available, but they never really looked at the true fund balance. So you can see as the years go on, it does become negative, but remember we do have set aside. So that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to spend all the money or get all the projects completed within that year. Does anybody have questions so far?
Yeah, could I comment?
Yeah, sure, please.
So a couple things is that I believe the Mizell we had taken out of the regular Measure J and not out of the community initiated. So if we go back to what we did in June, that was not part of.
I did go back and I reviewed that with Don and Joelle. And if you look at the staff report or the council meeting, shall I say, that was taken out of the community projects.
Oh,
it was?
I'm pretty sure it was
That was not our
but
intention.
I think we should go back and review that because I'm
We can
pretty
go-
sure.
Yeah, we can go back and review it. I think the commission's correct. I think the Mizell kitchen was a separate item altogether, but we can look at it and confirm. So
Yeah.
actually, if you go back to the actual spreadsheet that you had earlier, so if that's a true statement, 500,000, then you just raise 800,000 by 500,000.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because
right, and the money, the 500,000 just comes out of the regular J.
we had said that we didn't want to have such large single sums out of Measure J, and we've been working under the assumption that we still had 1.3 to 1.4 for the parks, which I think is also mentioned in the agenda. And then the other comment I was just going to make is that the roadmap, and I think Jim had outlined this, Commissioner Gassan had outlined this last time, is that this now next 9 months is spent working towards making sure we have recommendations that are in line with that 14.3 million. So even though it's already on your second year of your capital project, I think we have to go in and I'm not sure that Measure J can go in and recommend expenses more than anticipated revenue. I don't know that it's ever been done. And Commissioner Kazan, maybe you can, or Marcia, maybe you can chime in, but I think Measure J has always gone in and made recommendations equaling exactly or less than what the projected budget is.
Yeah, generally that's the aim.
Yeah. I'd agree.
I think if council were on it, I don't think they would approve spending more than what we anticipate getting, even though we might get it farther out.
Are you directing this question to me?
No, I'm just saying, I think that is, I was talking to Commissioner Gazan and Marshall. I think that is what will happen is in May or June, when the commission makes recommendations to council, it would be a little bit odd if it were more than, it would be unusual if it were more than the anticipated revenue.
Go back up to that schedule, Evelyn, please. So you're saying they wouldn't approve, they wouldn't let it go negative, the fund balance in 23-24.
It's never happened, so I'm not sure that I can't say no, but I think where the answer would be
Well,
I
yeah,
don't think that,
Could I phrase it differently to try and at least clarify it from me? Nancy, I think what Commissioner Bernstein's describing is the future set-asides appear to be consuming all the available cash.
Right. What happened is, well, we have a sales tax consultant and we get projections for 5 years from them. And so basically these are pretty darn close to what I use. It might be a little bit higher one year, a little lower, but it all evens out. As we know, the projections, we always project what we project and they always come in higher. So we'll keep an eye on that for going out further. So if we end this fiscal 22-23 and we're lower than the 20 million, then we're going to have to adjust the 5-year CIP project. But as of today, this is what we're projecting the revenues, and that's what Joelle has in its 5-year capital project.
that's not exactly, I mean, it's sort of what I'm saying, but it's also that as of before the budget's approved next June, Measure J has to make recommendations as to the recommendations for the Measure J funds. And that's what normally this roadmap is going through the year, looking at what is in that second year CIP and seeing if our recommendations are in sync with what engineering has. And then prioritizing, and as we get closer to the the May or June timeframe, we would also look at whether that 3.7 excess is actually that or not, and then potentially have to adjust our recommendations. Engineering,
right.
yeah.
Right, and I think
Yes.
you know what, I think we're all in agreement. That's the way it's going to happen, right? I don't think this is just a snapshot of today projecting to the future based
Okay,
on all decisions that we made, you know, to create the first budget. So the real numbers that are important here are 22, 23. Everything else is just a projection based on what projected we're going to get. And I think we were asked to do that in several meetings ago to try to project 5 years. This is what Nancy, I think, interpreted direction from the commission. I think it was Commissioner Bernstein that actually wanted this. So that's how we did. We just projected over 5 years. And obviously this is going to completely change. And as we progress, we're only going to be able to budget the amount of money that's available. And we're
okay,
exactly the same way as this is just a real quick snapshot in an attempt to see the future, which it's just, you know, we can't, and we're going to adjust as necessary moving forward.
okay. Sorry, I
We just wanted to make sure that where I got my revenue from the consultant, sales tax consultant, and where did you get your project numbers from? Well, those are for this 5-year CIP. So we have reference to go back to. We know the numbers will change, but this is as of today, the revenues we got and what's in Joelle's 5-year capital project.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, Vice Chair, I think you have another question.
Yeah, two quick questions. First one is information on the page. The $1 million contingency line item that's described in the roadmap, is that outside of this sheet, Nancy or Chris?
What contingency?
The city budget carrying a $1 million contingency for the Measure J projects.
For the community projects?
No, overall for the budget. I'm referencing what's included in the roadmap draft.
If there's $1 million contingency in Joelle's capital projects, it is included in there.
It's already here, okay. Second, for a more thoughtful consideration from Nancy and Chris, call it the bad news of a 15% dip. How do you look at that for the balance of the year? Is there anything more to add to that other than to present how things look today?
Basically, I had mentioned, I don't know if to you, but other commissions that I serve on, is that we're seeing a back to pre-COVID numbers now. The economy is starting to slow down. There's not as much sales tax. Our TOT is dipping. So I monitor this on a monthly basis. And knowing that the sales tax is 3 months behind collections. So basically, this is really June, is it June? Or July, this is July, I believe, sales tax number. Because you're always 3 months. So this is the first one we've received out of the fiscal year, if you will, without accruing it back. So we will, not only me, but you guys will all monitor this on a monthly basis to see what the dip is going to be every month. And then we'll have to make decisions and maybe make adjustments at that time.
I'm going to say my anticipation as someone who collects sales tax is that July, August, September will be down. That will be back to pre-COVID, but I think October on looks like it will be back to 2019 numbers. I don't know how that all plays out, but that's my guess.
It's almost like we need a crystal ball. We needed a crystal ball when COVID.
Sure.
We thought it was going to drop, and it went higher than ever. And now we're thinking, oh, well, this is going to be steady. We don't know what's going to happen. That's an issue. So that's why we truly want to monitor this on a monthly basis.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and just a couple of like I really appreciate seeing the beginning fund balance. I think that's going to be helpful for us to be referring to. And I do like I like the way that these are kind of broken out in terms of our proposed continuing appropriations across the 5 years. And we also know, because of all the economics like downturn and still supply chain issues all over our projects, the timelines are going to be affected as well. So I think there's multiple points that we're going to have to see when those expenditures are actually going to be used, and multiple points things are going to be moving. So but it's really helpful to have it 5 year out. So thank you for providing that. Any other questions for Nancy or Chris?
Can I add one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
So if you notice, if you go to your year-end unaudited, we're almost done with the audit this time. We're really close this year. So if you notice the last line saying continuing appropriations for 17 million, those are dollar amounts that have been budgeted for projects that have not been completed in 21-22. So we record that because the projects are going to obviously go forward, but we don't know when they're going to be completed. So right now you have 17.5 that hasn't even been spent yet for 21-22 projects.
Does that earn interest?
I'm sorry?
Does that earn any interest?
Oh, absolutely. The city's cash is all pooled together, and we use Chandler Asset Management Services consultants, and they're one of the top investors in California. So we meet with them weekly and go over all types of different investments.
Right.
That's great. I did have a question, Nancy, around the community initiated projects. Right now they're set at their original numbers of 3 million for the past 3 years and then $1 million out. Do we have an update as to if/when council is going to be reconsidering that allocation?
I'm going to think that maybe when we get the new council in or a new city manager. But again, we'll revisit this more near the budget time when what dollar amounts we get to spend for community projects.
Yeah, it's just a little tricky to wait until the spring because it'll determine if and how we get proposals from the community, right?
When do we get those proposals, Evelyn, approximately?
We had proposals in December, so I'm not sure if we open that back up and when we set the deadline.
Okay, because we're going to start our budget probably, we generally started around December, January. So then we'll be in talks with the city manager and with council. We'll know around December, January.
Were we also going to allocate some every year just for parks or wait to hear back on the parks plan?
That's a Joel question, what he has in his 5-year CIP.
Yeah, because those do really tie together the the magnitude of the community, whether it's one or something other, and the direction and comments from council on prioritizing bigger numbers for parks and other priorities. It's, you know, the valve is opened up with intention, but there's no corresponding line item that says we have more money to keep up with those intentions.
Yeah, and then there's one thing I would add to that too, before Joel, if you want to respond, is you know, there were projects that didn't get funded or didn't get considered, and so it'll just the allocation will determine if and how and when we open up community initiated projects. It might be, if it stays at $1 million, the commission may want to just have it like another read through of last year's application, or people want to reapply and kind of review their, you know, resubmit it to be stronger or whatever it might be. But there's just still a lot of projects that weren't funded. And so if it's still small, it might not make so much sense to do a big outreach effort come this fall. So not even just like a slight direction of whether or not it's something we should pursue would be helpful.
And what did we say the raise would be for community projects? Was there talk of a number?
We talked about tying it to revenue because the original $1 million came out and we were at 12 million, I think. So we talked about it being over
Like a set percent or something.
Okay, so probably like around 2 million a year or something like that.
But I mean, just going through this last year's budget, doesn't the commission think that it's going to be, the decision is not going to be made until we go back before council again, presenting our budgets? I don't know that, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, there's going to be an opportunity between now and when we start going before council with our budgets to change that number. They did, I think I heard they did say that they wanted to do it, but what would be the opportunity to take it? Would it have to be Nancy creating a staff report requesting council change that amount? It's got to be a trigger to go before council to make that decision.
It would seem to me that if this council wanted to do it, it should go before this council. But I don't know.
And it just seems very similar to last year or this last budget cycle where we were waiting for budget direction, and then it did not match necessarily the budget work we were doing all year long. So any other questions around the budget or community initiated projects? We've been on this for a bit. No? Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 2B, capital improvement project update. Joel, can you illuminate us?
Yeah, so I don't know if we want to bring up the memo, or if everybody has a copy of the memo, they can read themselves.
I can bring it up.
So really I was taking the opportunity to just kind of show the commission which projects were completed in the last 3 years, just to get a snapshot and everybody can see where we're at and what we've been doing the last 3 years. But more importantly, I want to take the opportunity to ask for additional funding and to tell the commission that for the 14 community initiated projects, 13 or 12 of them haven't been vetted, and this one that I'm bringing forward, it will show that there is a significant amount of cost increase based on just what's going on in the market right now. So we're not able to determine the true cost of our project. So the very first project that I want to talk about is the annual pavement rehabilitation. So it's really we put out our project out to bid. We got 3 proposals. Our initial estimate, based on all the experience we've had, and the person that put the project together has been here 20 years and had done most of our paving projects, and using all the information he had available, he created what we believe to be a $6 million project, a little bit shy of 6 million in his estimate, right? When we put it out to bid, when you can see in this, the 3 bidders were basically 7 million and above, or approximately 7 million. And the two of them were very close together. So when two bidders like this are so close together within $30,000 of a $6 million project, we know that the numbers are pretty accurate. This is the number that what we thought a $6 million project would be. So it's truly $1 million more, additional $1 million. So what I'm asking today is for the commission to allocate an additional $1.4 million to continue on with this project and award it. The one issue that I had is that we needed to post our agenda today. So I wrote a staff report saying that I'm bringing this request before the commission today to see if we could get it approved. And if the request is not approved, then I will pull the agenda item and then move forward with either I'll have to reject all the bids and go out to bid again and basically slash the project, bring it down towards the money that was originally allocated by the commission. So that's sort of what I'm asking, and I'm open to answer any questions.
I have a question, not so much on the project specifically, but on the funding source. And this is why I asked the question earlier about the $1 million contingency. Is there any special administrative hurdle to go through to tap that contingency, or is it treated as available funds within the commission's budget? So that if we were to say as a body tap that $1 million contingency as one source, and the balance of that 1.4 would be the 400,000, that would be a smaller number funded from the standard proceeds from Measure J. Does that make sense?
Right. Nancy, I don't know if you are following what their Commissioner Robin is asking. That in the, I guess, guidelines for the Measure J Commission, there's a statement that says that we should have a 1 million set aside every year. It's been being tracked, or it is tracked, or it's even accounted for as a $1 million contingency. So I think this is the first time I've kind of looked at that or even saw it come into play. So I really am not prepared to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe Nancy is either.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I wasn't aware of the $1 million contingency either, Joelle. So this year it would have to come out of the fund balance. It would have to come out of, if you look at your schedule for the adopted 22-23, it would have to come out of the 3.7 ending fund balance. So even if we had a contingency, we would probably keep it as a reserve in the ending fund balance. So even if we said reserve $1 million each year for projects, it would still be part of that fund balance. This would be reduced by 1 million, and your ending fund balance would be 2.730.
Okay, so even in other words, a hypothetical $1 million contingency is the last $1 million that gets drawn from available funds.
Correct.
It can't be. That hypothetical wouldn't be tapped to support the contingency on a line item project.
And if you would like, I can add a contingency going forward in our next meeting as part of an expense, so it sticks out more.
Yeah. See, I'm just maybe speaking what's on everyone's mind on this is here's a single project with a 15%
increase
budget problem for that project, for that line item, and we can trim the project back by 15%, or we can take it away from everything else that hasn't been designated.
One of the things that I did want to get across, and I know Commissioner Bernstein's has a question, is that this isn't just a one project problem. This is across the board, every single project we're going to bring forward, moving forward based on estimates, because we budget based on estimates, what we think projects are going to cost, right? And we do that a long time ago. We created these projects, we assume this is a cost, and once we get it awarded, we go through the budget cycle, we come back and we project this is how much we think we're going to need. But what I'm seeing is that every single project is going to have this sort of problem.
Yeah, get that loud and clear. This is the single largest line item as a project, and it's
Right.
So it's having the most dramatic impact, even though it's probably a 15% problem across the board, or something like that.
Mhm.
Commissioner Bernstein.
So, yeah, so thank you. So I have two questions for maybe when we should, or suggestions, maybe when we do our recommendations for next year, we actually build in to each estimate a contingency so that we don't end up not having enough money to do the things we approve.
Mhm.
That's one thing. And then the second thing is, and I don't know if there's a way to do this, but with the streets, obviously there's tens of millions of dollars worth of street repairs that we need done. And we sort of went by amount and said we used to do 3 million, now we want to do 6 million. And I guess there's no way to say to people like, what can you do for 6 million? Or it seems a little silly, but we only wanted to spend 6 million this year. Is there any way to like create the RFP that limits it, or I don't know.
Well, the way we do it is we have to identify street segments and square footages.
Mhm.
Take that projection, and that's how we build our projects. We have a spreadsheet that we think we know what the cost is going to be for oils or for the repaving, and we use that and we cap it at around 5.5 million was this cap. The reality of it is that the prices are so outrageous right now that this is what we believe to be a little bit under a $6 million project. In the past, council was asking, or in the budget, they wanted us to spend more money on paving. But the reality is a $5 million project, or what would have been a 5.5 million, is really a $7 million project. So it's the cost of construction and the cost of the materials that is making it a $7 million project, which is what it should have been, a 6 million. And we can limit it, but unfortunately, what it's going to do to me is I'm going to have to reject all the bids, revise my bid schedule, send it back out, and then hope that the prices are going to come in, cheaper, and they may not. The smaller project may come in even higher because it's a.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Footer.
I think this is one of the things in the city that absolutely is important. People are irate, they want their streets repaired, and it's a visible project. I would support going with this year and maybe taking a look from next year how to not have as many streets, Joel. I mean, you're kind of committed to your roadmap there with what's on deck to do. Am I right? For this
Pretty
year?
much, it is our projection every year. And
Yeah.
answer the question, why not my street? Hundreds of times
I know.
throughout the year. Yeah, this is my roadmap, and we're going out and redoing another study to make sure that we're staying on top of what the values are or the pavement condition indexes. So we're trying to do better. Based on this experience, the project that I'm going to put forward is going to probably be maybe a $5 million project, and see where the estimates come in. Hopefully, if the commission does give me another 6 million next year.
It's an enormous amount of money, but I think it's an expectation. Certainly people I know in the city, they want those streets done. And, having our street done was really a gift for a lot of reasons. So I think because it's already out there, it's going to be more, that's the economy. But going forward, maybe the direction for you would be make it a smaller project that we can anticipate this kind of increase. That's my personal opinion about that.
Yeah, I just want to chime in here. If time wasn't of the essence and we didn't want to lose these bids, I personally would be wanting to scale back because we've had already doubled the allocation, and to go an additional 1.4 is a significant increase from last year for street paving. but I recognize the time crunch you're in, Joelle. But I do think that's something we should be thinking about, not just for next year, but for every project. I'm thinking maybe even for the shade structures, or, being as comprehensive as we can, doing fewer projects, but really well done, rather than trying to maybe complete our original vision when we first approved some of these.
Yeah.
Because I hear you on the street paving that people want it, and that's true, but I hear so many comments about parks and other community infrastructure, and so it's hard to not have that same consideration, I guess, for all the other projects. The other thing I'll just underscore is this makes me appreciate even more, Joelle, your priority rankings that you shared last month, and making sure that we're making these decisions based off of the projects that are moving as quickly as possible and are most needed. So I think that it just underscores how much we need to be as strategic as possible.
Right. And I do want to comment a little bit about, I was asked, do we build contingencies? Every single one of my budgets, I built a 10% contingency. So every project I bring forward, there's already a contingency built in. And just the costs are just outrageous right now. And I would have to build in a 30-40% contingency every project, and that's not realistic either. So it's kind of a game we're trying to play, but we're not catching up.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about the next project as well before we're making a decision? Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, if you go down, Evelyn. The next project is essentially what I've been asked to do, right, is go and do park projects. And we are. I mean, in the background, we're working on a lot of park projects. They haven't been forgotten. They're actually high priority for us. We're working on a multitude of park projects. The one that's been, kind of repeated over and over again is they want shade structures over playground equipment. So we did. We started looking at it. So we got with our vendors, and we have some CDBG money to build shade structures over our playgrounds. In the Muse Park, we had essentially 186,000 for Baristo, 95,000. And then this goes to the community initiator projects and how we have to really vet every single project. Somebody put down 58,000 for Victoria Park. The reality is for Victoria Park to put the shade structures over the playground equipment as required, or as I was directed to do, it's going to be $470,000, almost 480. For Baristo Park is 200,000, and for Demuse Park is 385,000. So the reality is that we're severely underfunded to put in shade structure, a lot of money to do it. One of the things that I want to note is that we have been using a vendor that is basically a Sourcewell vendor that has a government contract with cooperative that is, we don't have to go out to bid. We can use that vendor, but we have found out some of the pieces of the project don't necessarily go out and get competitive bids. So my strategy was to ask for the money, create a project, a design, bid, build project that I could put out in the streets and gauge the true nature of the market to see if it's going straight to Sourcewell saved us money or it didn't. And obviously this is a $1 million project. I don't want to just hand it to one contractor. I want to go out to the market. But it does make it challenging for us because we have to write really specific specifications to try to meet the quality of the work that we're getting from this Sourcewell vendor. It's the one vendor that the city has used for a while, and it's really good quality. What we found out that other vendors don't use the same materials, and the shades, essentially the material weathers quicker, and we end up paying more money for that sort of material. So that's sort of in a nutshell what this is. That I need like another $750,000 to build the shade structures.
Commissioner Gazan.
I just say for the sake of time, I agree with these. I mean, this goes back to our joint meeting with council that maybe Measure J is simplified as far as how monies are spent. And it's basically a park bucket, roads and streets, and safety. And, these are the two issues facing us right now. We're looking at roads. It's necessary. It's what people want to see in the city, and parks was the big hot button from community comments and even from community input to projects to us. And I support these increases. I think, you know, the shade structures, we're the only city in the desert that doesn't have them. You know, you can go to some areas that I would think, wow, maybe they wouldn't be able to afford it, and you see shade structures. So I'm in support of this, and I'm ready to take a motion.
Commissioner, Vice Chair.
I'd like to offer some comments briefly on the street budgets, the road repairs and paving. I think going forward, it would be to avoid this happening again, whether it's streets or others, where the commission is put in a position of exacerbating a problem by saying no to a funding request. And that exacerbation can be a potentially higher project cost later on top of a later project. Joel, if you and your team don't do it already with bigger projects like that, if you could anticipate ways to build in deducts as an option for the project team when they're bid, so that you don't have to do a full rebid. You know your business better than I do, but just using that as an example of maybe that doesn't have us feeling cornered.
Right. No, and that was never my intention. We were trying to put out a project that was under the 6 million. We thought we had room to play with. The numbers were just outrageous. And one of the things that's difficult to put out there is when you put it out on the streets, and a deduct would be, okay, we're going to do X amount of streets and all these other streets, and we list them and we put a map. We're going to tell those clients or those residents, we're not going to do your street till next year. So the cost, you know, it could be more next year, it could be less. So if I do a $3 million project this year, right, it's going to be half of the streets. Next year, I'm going to try to do the next half of the streets for 3 million, and I won't be able to. It'll have to be 4 million, 5 million. So it's going to continue the same way. This is never my intention to put a commission in a corner to make it.
Of course.
I could absolutely pull the agenda item and reject all bids and start again to stay within the 6 million. It's just that I will have to eliminate certain streets to do that. And it's okay, I will do it. It's just we didn't anticipate this extreme amount of cost of and beyond what we anticipated.
Thank you. And if I could add on the shade structure, I look at the Victoria Park shade priorities maybe a little bit differently than others. Here's a good example of unfortunate news, bad news. A community project came in with a number that seemed easily digestible as a community project line item. If we had known it was a $500,000 project, if I had realized that it was to cover over 6,000 square feet, myself, I would have turned this back to Parks Department the Parks Department and the professionals to vet this project, is whether the scope is suitable and whether it should be included in the priorities for the Parks Department. Looking at this with hindsight, I wouldn't have recommended this project as a community project if we knew then what we know now. Mm-hmm. So I'm not in support of doing the Victoria Park shade structure at this point.
I guess I would say, I'm sorry, Commissioner Marshall, you go.
I'm in agreement with that observation. If I'd known it was going to be 474 versus 58,000, I wouldn't have voted for that. So I can't support it either.
Commissioner Gazan.
Well, is this coming out of community, or is the 750 coming out of general measure J? I mean, are we just kind of pushing a portion of this project into regular measure J funds, Joel?
Well, I didn't distinguish between the funds, but I think we just showed that there's some remainder in the community initiator projects. There's a dollar value that's there, whether we include Mizell or not. There's a dollar value there, and there's also a dollar value of remainder of funds in Measure J. I didn't distinguish between the two or where the money would come from. It doesn't necessarily have to come from a community initiated. It could be a bigger capital fund. So it would be up to the commission to decide where they want to pull the additional.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree it would give us pause for community based on that number, but again, I'm just common sense here. Let's get this stuff done. This is what the community wants to see. This is what Measure J is all about. And I think this is important, and I don't want to ignore a park on the north side. Once again, someone's going to say the north side is getting ignored, and our parks need this.
I think Parks Department needs to decide whether this is a priority among their priorities.
So a couple of clarifications. We have invited the Parks and Recs Department to prioritize all of the projects that came to us from the community initiated projects, everything from the pavilion to Sunrise. It was like 1.8, I think, or 1.2. They're not ready to present those priorities yet. So that is, it's not that it's not going to happen. It's just not ready yet. And I think this also goes to like the direction from council. If we do want these buckets, it makes it a lot easier to then know where some of these fundings, sources are coming from. And I guess that what I would also say as well, Joelle, around these shade structures is, doing one or two and making them like really comprehensive and excellent, where not like half the playground is not usable, I think is going to be a value. Like we should be thinking like as comprehensive as opposed to like the original vision. And at least that's my personal opinion. And the last thing I'll say is I think the fact that community initiated projects are not completely financially representative of what they're going to cost, I think is a given in terms of when we're getting community input. Like this is the part where we're determining how close they are. And we always knew that there was going to be projects that were going to get dropped from consideration as the vetting process starts. So I think this is going to be something we grapple with several times over the next year or two as the projects are getting more comprehensively vetted. But it is a reflection of what community members want, right? They're not engineers, they're not experts in supply chain construction, but they do know that when they go to the park, they can't like get on the swing, right? Like that is their expertise and their lived experience. And so I'm personally okay with things being off. And then we're just gonna, I feel like, constantly readjust.
Well, I think it's important to look at the economies of cost too. If you only do half of the project and then you come back and do Victoria Park in 2 years, it's going to be even more expensive. And, you do get economies when you can have a bigger project. A contractor is going to look at this and say, hey, you got a lot going on here. We're going to have some cost savings in this bid because you're doing a bigger project as opposed to piecemealing it. I wish I would have remembered this 58,000. I would even look at that and say there's no way you can do a shade structure for that, but that's neither here nor there. But I don't know. I just feel like this was important to our commission. If the monies are there, I just feel like these are two areas that are very important to the community and that we move on.
If I could just say, I think as far as the road repaving, just going back to that, I think we need to move forward with that one because, we know it's an estimated amount, and if anything, we can lower next year's recommendations to cover that because it's obviously an ongoing thing. We had $6 million a year, so next year, let's just only spend 5 to go over $1 million. I have a question on Demuth and Barristo. Were these ever Measure J projects, or were they always CDBG?
These are CDBG funded. So if you think of Demuth and Barristo, we're asking for just basically CDBG is covering half the cost. So these were CDBG. These were not brought forward to Measure J originally.
So these are brand new asks that I think is something we could consider for next year. I don't know that should come to us right now.
Okay.
And I would say with Victoria, I agree with Jim. That park is terrible, just to be honest, and I think it needs this. But it's 10 times what we thought it would be. And so now we're making the decision about taking something else from parks that might be better. And I want Victoria Park fixed and made nicer, but I think this is exactly where we need to let the parks director know that we approved this. It's now 10 times more. Do you want us to go forward? Because if they say yes, we should, but if they say no, they have better options, then we have to consider that. I think it would be, it's 450,000, 20,000 more than we thought it would be, and that's a lot of money out of community projects.
One of the things that I do want to say that I think I probably didn't cover properly here. One of the additional funding projects that were given funding through the budget was playground equipment, shade structures. We got 281,960 in the budget for shade structures already. And it was shade structures for playground equipment. It wasn't Demuth or Barista. And I think I didn't cover that properly in this memo that may be able to cover the Demuth Park and Barista Park, because what was given to me was for playground equipment, not specific equipment. The Victoria Park came in from the community initiated project. So we're taking them all as whole projects. It's hard to just decide one or the other. These are big projects and we're trying to do them all at the same time. So I think that I didn't represent that properly here in this memo.
Yeah, and we know you're trying to find as many funding sources to get as many projects funded. And so I think your funding matching is much more complicated than our like simple buckets that we're trying to lean on. So it's like talking two languages, and I appreciate you being in between trying to explain it. So at this point, we have to consider if we want to approve. We have the 1.4 additional for the paving and for the streets, and the 750,000 for the parks. I guess we should probably separate those, since it seems like there's
yeah, it's two different requests. So yeah, if you could separate them and make a motion on one of them first.
Do we have a motion for the street paving increase of 1.4?
I move that we go for approve, make that recommendation and move forward.
I second.
And if I could just add, and potentially look at next year at reducing it somewhat, so that we're keeping to our 6 million a year average.
Right, and that's part of the whole budget process. That's why I create the 5-year CIP. I'm projecting, I'm moving money around, and yeah, absolutely. That's a given that if next year we see the downward trend continue, the project's going to go smaller. It may be going back to the 3 million that we originally got, which was still a significant amount of money. The 6 million was, it's great because we're going to cover a lot of the city, but we were originally planning to spend 3 million over time. The next cycle of street pavement management design, when I hire my consultant, they're going to give me a projection. That number may change now because we've done so many projects already. So I'll have more information in the future.
Great. So I think we have a motion by Chair Bernstein. I think I heard a second by Commissioner Gazan. All in favors of the 1.4 increase for streets?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, or good luck, Joel, I should say. And then next we have the $750,000 request for the shade structures. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to fund the additional requests for Demuth and Barista, but defer Victoria Park until there's more dialogue and diligence by Parks.
I second that.
I just want to discuss, we never considered Demuth and Barista shade structures. So this is a whole new consideration for Measure J, and
But
I'm not
Joel,
sure.
Wasn't it part of a past? I thought it was something we passed previously, not for this past year, but this was
the blue
from like
shade
over a year
structures.
ago. Is that correct, Joel?
You know, I'm right now, I'm not bringing it to memory if it was, it might have been, again, in the budget that was passed, there is funding available. But
Yeah, I thought we had funding for
Thousands.
shade
You know,
structures.
if I could,
Right,
if I could just, these
so-
are
so you-
CB, these are CDBG projects. And there's already separate funding in the budget for shade structures. So it really should come out of that separate funding.
So I'm able to cover most of it, and this is where I didn't do my homework. I'm able to cover most of it, the two Bristol and Demuth, with the existing 281,960 budget. It's already, it's one of the line items in the budget for playground structures.
So that's already off, that's already covered. So the only question.
Most
left
of it,
really
most of it
storage.
is. I don't think I have all the money for it, so it may require additional funding because I think I'm missing a few 20, 30,000, and I'm trying to do the math on the fly here. But if the motion could be for me to cover the remaining balance above and beyond what's already allocated, which would be 20, 30,000, I think I would cover it. So I'm trying to do the math on the fly here, so to get you an exact number.
Right, because
So
you're
if I
not
could-
asking for the full 385 for Demuth and a full 202 for Barristo because
No.
300 is covered with the CDBG grant.
Yeah.
It's between CDBG and also already in the regular city budget. So if we're amending this, that we approve under 50,000 for Demuth and Barristo, that makes sense.
Yeah, it would be 20, the exact number right now is 23.5, but I would take the 50 and then and that would make me whole for Demuth and Barristo to move them forward with the line item already in the playground. So I still will need money, and then the Victoria Park is still the ask.
So I would suggest we separate this and we have one approval for Demuth and Barristo, which is under 50,000. And then we can have a separate motion for Victoria, which would be 425,000. Is
And
that
Joel,
possible?
I would say I would, that would be appropriate for me, but I'll leave it up to the committee.
I think that makes sense.
Joel,
Yes,
Joel,
sir.
as far as a design, I mean, I know with like park restrooms, we're going with sort of a cookie cutter design for all the restrooms. I mean, I can't imagine that the Parks Commission would say shade at Victoria Park is not important to them. And of course, they have a laundry list that's a mile long, but if they said, yes, we want shade, I mean, is there anything with Victoria Park? I mean, we would probably want consistencies, correct? I mean, using the same vendor, same design, same look and feel at all these parks.
Yeah, for the most part, they're all very consistently looking the same. It's the sails, right, with the big steel tubes, because the wind is really what's important. So there's big footings and steel, and something you can put on top of them is those winch canopies that you see everywhere, the triangular canopies. So the designs are going to be very similar. It's just the colors that maybe vary here or there. And when we write what becomes interesting, if I do go out and not use my vendor, we have to dictate all those, the colors, we have to dictate the design, and it becomes a little bit more complex, but it may be appropriate because we're talking about $1 million here. So I have to do my homework to make sure I give the residents what they deserve and make sure I'm being, taking into consideration the costs associated with each one of these projects.
I know I'm probably the odd man out on this, but I just feel in cost economies, doing all 3 locations, I feel like we've been so constipated with so many of these park projects that it would just be nice to finally see something move forward and deliver to the public. I mean, even the restrooms have just taken forever and it's been painful. I mean, especially the one in Demuth. So I don't know. That's me. I just would go for it. I know that it's something that the community spoke very boldly when we met with council. A lot of the comments came in about the lack of shade in these parks, and our summers ain't getting any cooler. And I don't know.
I would, yeah, I would support that that push, Commissioner Gazan. I mean, I would even say it's just in the summer. There are times in the middle of the day in the winter where you cannot go down the slide at our parks because children will burn their legs. And so it is a year-long problem. And if we have some of the funding and we have an opportunity to fill in the gap and get more coverage at more parks, it seems like something that is so desperately requested by.
But in an effort to say to I know you guys want to cover some other things. Could we split those two into two different?
Yeah. Yes. I think
And
that's a
then-
great idea. So let's maybe get a motion for the up to $50,000 to cover the balance at Demuth and Baristo Park.
I second it.
Okay, so I think I saw Commissioner Gazan, your hand up, and then Commissioner Vice Chair Robin as a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Great. So
Right, for the
So-
record, can we repeat who the motion was made by and who the second was?
made by Commissioner Gazan, second by Vice Chair Robin,
Thank you.
of course. Okay, so now that gives us the remaining, the Victoria Park, which I think would then be 700, which staff is requesting. Well, I don't, do we need
400,
470?
425.
Additional.
Which, again, guys, I mean, I'm just gonna say it, this will go up if we wait, so we can be conservative today, but you kick this can down the road, you're gonna pay more down the road for it, and to me, that's just we do a lot of that in this city, and it's, you know, it's money wasted.
Cash, Joel, do you think it would go up within a month?
Not within a month. I mean, it would be consistent, but they will. Every price goes up. You know, the markets are fluctuating like up and down. You know, week to week. So, you know, in good. If they tell you that it will go up, I don't know. I won't be able to answer that question with.
But it will delay the work of the other parks until we have an answer for Victoria, correct?
It would, because I think it would be better to have one big project.
Yeah,
So I know this is it's become more than what I anticipated. If we can withdraw this playground equipment discussion and let's me prepare a different map, have the same discussion next month, I think it would be more appropriate, because I really want to deliver these projects, but I wanted to give everyone an opportunity and maybe even have time to talk to parks folks. I think that would be best. The commission sort of kind of stuck.
If I could just say, I agree that we need to move this forward. If it doesn't kill it by waiting a month, and we can get the you know, the parks you know, parks director to confirm that this makes sense, then I would do that. But I would still want to see it move forward by next month at the latest.
I think, if I can offer that, if we can withdraw the entire request, I'd like an opportunity, because I think I may have done something that with the funding that is bugging me right now. So I think I would even want to be able to talk to you guys again in a month to clear this up and have a better discussion.
And I'm willing to wait 1 month based for you, Joel, because of a little bit of your trepidation with the numbers.
Yeah,
I do feel strongly, we've always been hand in hand with the Parks Commission, but I just think after restrooms, this is the #2 priority. I think with parks is shade. So
I think-
they can come to us and say they want trees, pickleball courts, soccer fields, whatever. this, you're negating and wasting all of your play equipment if it's not shaded. Then it's just silly even having play equipment in the park to begin with. So I think it's important, and I'm willing to wait a month, and mainly because of staff, just for you to look at the numbers, and then I'm hoping we can move forward.
I'll bring it back in a month, and I'll even bring pictures of, I think Desert Highland has their shade structures up there already in the playground equipment.
Yeah,
Right.
Appreciate that.
and Evelyn, maybe if we could just, I know Parks and Rec Commission has their processes that they're starting, but if we could just underscore, it'd be really helpful to have them next month. That would be really, that'd be great.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Can I just add one more, an open-ended question, or maybe an open-ended comment? I just I'm a little frustrated that there seems to be, I guess, here's a situation where the quote unquote, we want what we want. We want shade. It costs what it costs. Give us what we want. Okay, that's an understandable sentiment. I would sure appreciate input from others with more expertise than I have on how to solve the problem of the shade Victoria, and either an affirmation or clarification that, yep, there's only one way to do it. This is the way to do it. No matter what we talk about, this is the answer. No need to poll anybody who's an expert. So I'm not a park expert. I just would like input from people who are. And Joel, I know you have your template and you have your basic design that you would apply to this. I would like to know if there's more than one option here that costs $475,000, and if that's the best way to satisfy what the needs of the community are.
Yeah, and I know we don't know exactly what it would be, but even the parks that have shade, they're not very comprehensive shade. And so I think like just a vision of what that shade is would be helpful for us to understand, as to, like you're mentioning, pictures, or, you know, just kind of what you're hoping for, even if it's a replication of Desert Highlands or if there's something else, or James O'Jesse, I should say. Okay, should be an interesting conversation next month. Let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the discussion and completion of the fiscal year 2022-2023 calendar and draft roadmap. Evelyn, can you pull that up?
I'm sorry, did you finalize the motion for the 425,000?
No, we're going to do it next month. We're
Okay.
going to bring back the whole discussion next month.
Okay. Just bring that up. Okay. Would you like me to share my screen?
Yeah, it would just be helpful to review some of that section of the calendar. So last month we reviewed the kind of what we're hoping to do every single month, or like our general goals. Obviously this is not set in stone, but did anyone have any feedback around that section? I also want to have a general conversation around the policy review at the top, but before we do that, it might just, can we do a quick, are we all clear on the calendar and feel good on it?
Yes.
Okay, can you see my
Yeah.
screen? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess the yeah, it's so quick how you can fall behind. It's incredible. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. Okay, so it sounds like we're all good on the calendar. What I was hoping we could have a quick discussion on, and maybe these might be questions that have to go to the interim city manager or council, is the policy review at the top. And maybe Commissioner Gazan, you might have some insight as to like where these, Evelyn, can you scroll up just, yeah. So that 1 through 6, like how much to lean on as that our basic structure, because there's a few things that are inconsistent, right? So if you look at policy number 2, it's the $1 million contingency, and how much do we lean or kind of expect that. Item 3 is if/when that community initiated projects allocation is going to increase. Number 5 is updated to reflect the new $6 million. And then for number 6 is really looking at the timeline of what we're thinking for the year. So we've always done capital projects and community initiated projects presented in the joint council in May. And if that is kind of the determined timeline, then I think we have a pretty clear answer as to when requests like last month come up that are outside of that, when requests are coming sooner, right? So it is, how much do we lean on this timeline for all decisions that come from the community or from the city? Sometimes the city staff has recommended projects that are a much faster timeline, and we make that recommendation beforehand. So it seems like there might be some inconsistency as to how we apply some of these policies. And so I wanted to just open it up, the discussion a little bit to the whole commission as to their general kind of acceptance, reservation for any of these policies.
If I could jump in.
Yeah, please. Robin.
Chair Soto, I think you covered the points you covered. I agree that those are necessary clarifications, and I just want to amplify the last point using as the example today's discussion of shade structure funding and whether we're talking about a new project, and then last month's that was brought in for Jane Garrison. So as a policy matter, if it's a line item 7 here, policy review 7, do we or do we not have the latitude to consider projects brought to us mid-year by either staff or others within the city, within city management? And thirdly, whether there is a community initiated project that comes to us mid-year, are we allowed to be receptive and make recommendations to city council, or do we follow a rule that says, thank you, either city professional staff or city community? Do we say instead, we'll write that down and we'll consider it in May?
If I can just answer, I mean, presumably all of the money that is 22, 23 has already been allocated.
Right.
That's what city council approved, and that's what we make recommendations. So we're actually spending this year making recommendations for 23, 24. And we have to make recommendations before the budget is adopted. That's how the ordinance reads. We can present things ahead of time, but either we have to change the current 22, 23 budget, or if there's more money than we thought there were, we can request that. But we can't really go and spend more than what has been approved and what we actually have this year.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
but how do you, within that construct, Commissioner, how do we address, how do we distinguish between those hypothetical future unfunded versus those that could be funded with unallocated approved funds in the current year. We happen to have excess now.
If we have excess now, we can certainly do it. So, but it has to be within this year's budget that we're spending that money. It's not like we can take next year's money and do it.
Okay.
We have
So
to have the money.
using today's discussion of shade structures to fill the gap of the community grant funding, or using the example of Jane Garrison's request, if there happens to be, and there's available funds, would the policies that are in place allow us to act on those requests, or do we need to defer because we need to defer?
There's nothing.
In other words, the phrasing a month ago was, here's a community project. We can't respond to a community project request because we haven't opened up the offering to the entire community.
Yeah, but
That's our own, that is our own policy and how we do it, and obviously being fair to the community. But if we have excess funds this year, which we do, we can certainly go to city council and say, this is how we want to spend them, and not have to wait till next year. We just can't go beyond this year. Otherwise, it would be sort of odd to say we want to borrow next year.
Jeffrey,
And
don't
is
we
that-
typically, if we have an overage, it just goes into the next
yeah. Yeah,
fiscal year as we're looking at capital improvement projects? I've always thought that if there's money left over after this year, it goes towards
next year's project.
So it's next year's, yes, but if we have
23, 24.
right now we have 3 million extra in 22, 23.
And
So
I
there's
don't,
nothing.
for Commissioner Robbins' point, and it might be a little simpler, typically we can learn of projects, whether they're community or something that the city should be looking at, that would be typically can be addressed in every meeting through public comment. So last month was maybe a little bit of a hiccup. That request probably should have been more public comment, and then it could have been addressed as a future agenda item to discuss, or that we're not discussing it and it becomes part of a community initiated project for next year.
Right.
So typically people can come to our meetings and make public comment, and we've had it before where they want crosswalks or safety issues or whatever. That's done traditionally in public comment, and it can be a consideration for us if it, again, last year was so new on so many fronts, for the first time in probably 6 years of the commission at least, where we open things up to the public. So that is the time for people to address those issues. And if someone feels strongly about something, this is where they lobby council or staff, and it may come through staff. Typically, our projects that we're considering from a capital standpoint, the bulk of our budget is coming from staff. And that's generally that filter. So I don't know if that clarifies.
So with that construct,
I maybe have dumbed it down a little bit, but
I liked it. With the construct though, if we use the last month's description and public comment by Jane Garrison, if that were to go any further in this way it's being described, we would have to hear about it from within the city professional staff. It would not be something. It would not be something that we would add to an agenda in December.
Yeah.
Typically correct. Otherwise, we'll never get anything done. If everyone,
So if I could just cut Chase, that was a unique issue because she had requested it for one thing that we considered, and she wanted to change it.
Right.
You don't have to do it. So we could have gone back to city council and said we have this 1.4 million in parks money that we did not allocate, and now we want to take 300,000 and not wait for the parks director, and we want to spend it on that. We could have done that and presented to city council. We didn't do it, and that's okay. But there's nothing stopping us from doing it. It
Yeah,
would be very unusual to take an odd community project, somebody comes up with something brand new and add it, because that really tarnishes the whole idea of community projects and considering them all at once.
That's true.
If it's something that comes from the city, like Joelle said, well, this is going to cost more and we have $3 million sitting there, there's nothing stopping us from going to the city now, and he adds it to an agenda item that we recommend and they approve. Anything that goes beyond this year's budget would be for next year, for May, when we present. So,
Yeah.
so that's.
Yeah, can I,
Yes, Commissioner.
if I am wrong on this, please correct me, but I thought Jane was asking to take the trees off of the wash and put them on Prescott. And I felt everybody really said that opens up a can of worms about the integrity of our work, because you could say, and the example that I heard was the skate park at Desert Highland Community Center. Well, what if they came now and said, well, we really don't want that, but we want something else. And so she has the opportunity to apply for this year's community project, which you bet she will be first in line. But I think it's very important you keep your integrity in place. We did our work, people submitted their paperwork, it was all vetted, and that's how it came out. And I was very glad we did not. That's a great project. I don't need to go on about that. But it's the process of the Major J Commission. We are trying to be open and fair and distribute the funds to the big things and to the small things. So I think her opportunity is coming up in the new community projects, and she will do that. But we have to make a decision and stick by our decision. That's my personal kind of ethics on the thing.
No, the decision's already been made. I think the question was raised, what could we do? We could
Right,
have.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
The question is, what for future considerations, like what is just the quick decision that what will be the quick determination that will decide for us whether or not we can consider it at the time. And I appreciate this conversation around community initiated projects versus people who come to us during public comments throughout the year, because just because someone gives us comments and public comments doesn't always lead to an inquiry of the veracity of the need or a study or potential. And so I do think it's important that there is a more formal mechanism for community members to be able to submit that request. If they do it both, that's even better. But I think I don't want to make it in case anybody's watching this feature, that every public comment then immediately leads to the same process that every community initiated projects goes through, right? That is not necessarily the case. But it does seem like there are some other policies here that haven't been updated. So I don't know, Evelyn, if this is something that can be part of the kind of council review in terms of direction for council, if this still makes sense for future commissioners who are on board, like they're going to be looking at this calendar, trying to understand the work that we do. So making sure this is as up to date as possible is really helpful. Any other comments around the policy review? Vice Chair Robin, did we answer your question?
Yes. And I think in a nutshell, there is a difference between a request coming from a citizen or a citizens group versus a request coming mid-year from the city professional staff or council.
Yeah, and we might want to have something on here that says we can take action on if there are unallocated funds, but that is kind of like our max point.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the clarification, everybody.
That might be a good thing to do, Chairperson, to have that, so you don't have to have the same discussion. It's very clear what Major J can do. So. you might write another proposal that makes that clearer.
So maybe I'll draft something to Evelyn and then we can review it next council or next commission meeting. And if you're good with it, we can leave it in.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we are running behind. Is there any other general discussions or commissioner comments and requests?
Just one thing quickly, I would urge another discussion with the city's media communications department. Now that we have the school thing, we're gonna have the Mizell thing to make sure that Measure J is highlighted in our activities, because I don't think people will really fully realize all the things that Measure J does. And I don't know about any of the other projects we approved or other things that are happening, but just to make sure that Measure J is always highlighted for things we funded.
Mhm.
I think to add to that, I think it would be helpful to have that as a standard line item, a standard item on each agenda. So we're addressing it.
Like publicity and community outreach efforts?
Yeah, because we every meeting, we know we want something to happen.
And I think we should make a formal, I mean, Mizell is the first one that's happening, and I think we should make a request that they formally acknowledge Measure J in their, whatever they do, you know, because they've gotten the money now, and I don't know how to do that, but the same with the school district, when the first thing happens, that there is something that involves Measure J, because I think it's important to continue the tax going forward.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll put a request out maybe to Amy to see the easiest process, both to give us direction on what they can do and then a report out as to the posts or, you know, what was done. Yeah, fair point. Okay. Well, thank you for your comments and your participation and your time. I'm sorry we ran a little bit late, but these were helpful conversations. Next regular Measure J meeting is Thursday, November 17th at 5:30. See you there. Until then, we'll close out this meeting and adjourn at 7:06.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.